Hello guys, and welcome back to the Summer Day Studios YouTube channel. In today's video we are going to be starting a brand new project. So you guys might have been here, maybe you weren't if you're new, but we a little while ago did a Maya hard surface modeling tutorial on making a sailing ship from the 1800s, and that went on for quite a while, and we ended up creating a fully textured and completed model. We've decided we're going to do another hard surface project, kind of just starting from scratch, really, from the ground up again, going over everything from reference collection, setting up your scene, tips and tricks as we go, and getting through to finishing the final model, and then doing final shading and rendering and lighting as well. This will likely be a shorter project, just because the scale and complexity aren't anywhere near as massive as they were with that old project. So you might have already figured out, just based on what we have on the screen, what we're going to be doing. So we have this truck here. This is a Suzuki pickup of some kind. This kind of cute looking little Japanese pickup truck. But it came in various different forms, and it's quite boxy but has some curved shapes to it as well. Modeling cars can be a little tricky, especially modern ones, because they have these very flowing angles and shapes, and it's a lot to do if you haven't modeled a car before, or if you're newer to modeling. So I thought a shape like this, a vehicle like this, something smaller, a bit more boxy, might be a better starting point for us to go over, and it will still teach us a lot of the kind of basic principles that we need. So let's kick things off. I figured what we'd start with is just going over reference, why it's important, what we use it for, where best to get it, and some tools that we can use. So reference, whenever you're creating something real, is incredibly important. I cannot understate that enough, or overstate that enough, sorry. You might imagine in your head that you have a pretty clear picture of what something looks like, and sometimes that might be the case, but for most people probably not, unless you have some sort of like photographic memory. Even for simple objects, you'll try and create them, and then you compare them to the real world afterwards, and you're like, well, actually, this doesn't quite match. Things are a bit off. The proportions aren't here, maybe the colors are wrong, or something will be off, right? So reference, when you're creating real world objects, especially something for as complex as a vehicle like this, is really, really important, because it's going to show you everything, you know? You might have the base ideas in your head, but maybe the differences in dimensions and the angles will be wrong. Like, you might get the headlights the wrong size, the wheels will be in the wrong place, and it's much harder to go in and fix that later on, after having realized what's wrong, than actually starting with a good foundation, which is using proper reference, having that all set up in your scene, and so on. So to that end, a piece of software that I'd really like to recommend that is actually free is the one we're using right here, called PureRef. It's very lightweight, it's very simple looking, but it allows you to drag around, resize reference. You can import all your reference images into this scene. You know, I have this reference here that we're using today, and if I go ahead and just drag and drop all of this in, like so, it kind of automatically populates it and scales it depending on how big the image is. You can even go ahead and label these. Like, if I were to right click over here and go to notes, and then we'd just call this, I don't know, like truck ref. You know, so you can create this whole mood boards, reference boards, if you like. You can lock it as well with Control R. I currently have this set to be always on top as well. You can press Control Shift A, and that will unlock that and put it to the background whenever you select your main window. So yeah, it's a really powerful tool. You can go to just www.pureref.com to download it from here. Just go to Get PureRef and follow the instructions. Really simple to set up and install. It's free. I think you can donate if you want to under the support page. Just perfect reference tool, really. If you have a second monitor like I do, it's fantastic just to have up on your second screen basically the whole time, so you don't have to keep going and scouring through different folders for reference, okay, or going through the default Windows or like Mac based photo viewer. You know, you just have it all here in one board, right, like you would in real life. So yeah, that's what I would start with. The second thing is, when you're actually collecting your reference for modeling a car, the most important thing is actually having some decent blueprints, and this was the same with our ship model. So I have these here. Because I think this is a very specific vehicle, there aren't too many high quality reference images out there. There is one which is very, very nice. It's vector based, but I think you have to purchase it. It's something like $25. And for the sake of making this video, I didn't really want to tell you guys to go ahead and spend $25 on a piece of reference. It's a bit insane, you know, that for some people that's their groceries for the week. So I found these free ones online and just up-res them, upscaled them a little bit, and hopefully this should suffice. This gives us all the different angles. We have the front, back, left and right sides, because they are going to be slightly different depending on the vehicle, and we're actually going to use these to kind of block out the shape of our model. We did the same thing with the ship model if you were here for that, and we can set up a few different image planes in Maya, and I'll show you how to do that in a moment. The next most important thing is collecting reference for detail as well from various different angles. So I have, and you want this to be reasonably high resolution so you can tell what's going on, not only because this is going to help you get all the details right, you know, like we can see the panel thickness here, there being some difference probably just due to age, wear, or manufacturing errors or something. You can see the actual makeup of the headlights, these grills behind these intakes over here, and just various different bits and bobs. You also get some really, really nice texture information, right? Like we can see the various different bits of paint chipping, some light rust and grime, the dirt on the tires, and the slight kind of color differences on the actual bodywork of the truck itself. All really, really fantastic to see. Get some good close-up images like this as well, because this is going to be good not only for the model as well, but again, the materials, you can see how reflective this surface is, like most car paints really. And it's going to be kind of hard to tell, you know, for example, the rim around this indicator light here, if we come to this image, you can see there's actually a bit of a lip. So it's good to have reference from all angles. I also quite like to find reference from model kits, just because it can kind of help break the parts down. They're not always fantastic, because models inherently are a recreation like ours of the real thing, so I wouldn't take them as gospel. Definitely refer back to a real life reference, but from time to time I like to use these just to help me figure out where things go together, how they fit together, and so on. If you can't get that reference already from real life objects, okay, like a top down angle like this is going to be hard to get in real life, but spend as much time as you need gathering reference. I will attach a link to PureF for you, and we'll also provide these blueprints for you as well. But yeah, so that's the section on reference. So the next thing that I like to do is just set up our scene, and I already have these settings set kind of by default, but I like to just make sure that since we're modeling, things are we're giving as much space as possible, so I like to reduce the size of the timeline bar and just pull that down to give us as much space as possible. We're obviously on the poly modeling toolkit up here with this Scepter modeling. There's a few other little housekeeping things I like to do. If you come up to Windows and go to Settings and Preferences, and then Preferences, there's a few things here that we can change before we get started. The first thing being, if you come to Settings, one of the most important things whenever you're modeling anything to real world scale, or just in general really, is working units, size, dimensions, right? We can follow everything as closely as possible to the reference, but we want things to be the correct scale so that lighting and everything can interact correctly. And especially if you're working in production, they'll have their own working units. In some studios, you know, one Maya unit will be meters. You know, if you're not sure what a working unit is, if I just make a default cube, you can see the scale X, Y, and Z is all just 1 by default. So in some studios within VFX, likely game as well, but I just don't have as much experience to talk on that, one unit might be a meter, one unit could be a centimeter, it could even be a millimeter. I've not heard of anyone doing that. But typically the way I like to work is in centimeters, just because it helps us give a bit more granular control over the dimensions of things rather than having it purely in meters. So if you come to settings, make sure you change your working units to centimeters or whatever you'd like to do, but just for the duration of the tutorial, we are going to be working in centimeters, just bear that in mind. And for angular degrees, you know, you can have it in radians if you want, but by default it's degrees, so it's okay just to leave that as is. The next thing I like to come down to is undo. By default, the Q for this, as in the amount of times you can undo something, will be set to finite and will only be set to 50. Now, that's really not a lot. I have been in situations where I've needed to undo quite a lot of work. 50 will not cut it, believe me, and if you forget to turn this on to infinite, you're really going to be kicking yourself. Come down to undo, set this to infinite, you won't have to touch it again. It will just stay there, and most modern hardware should be able to support this anyway. I'm surprised this isn't on by default for most software these days, including Maya, but there you go. Anyway, that's one thing to make sure you have turned on. The next thing that we're going to go over is we can now actually get into getting this thing started. So I have some dimensions here that I've taken down. So for the truck that we're going to be modeling, this Suzuki, the dimensions are, it's 3.4 meters long, 1.47 meters wide, and then 1.7 meters high. This is very, very important because it's going to... So in order to get the scale correct, one of the things I like to do is just start with a cube, and we're going to make this cube kind of like a bounding box. It will be the overall dimensions of our truck. Not obviously the forms, because it's just a cube, but it will have the overall dimensions. So with these in mind, we're going to take our cube. Okay, by default it will start with something like this. I'm going to open up this one menu here, and I'm going to go to Edit Pivot. I'm just double clicking on Translate, by the way, to bring that up. And I'm going to align that to the base of our cube. Okay, we're going to enclose this. I'm going to press W on the keyboard again, or I'm just going to reselect the object just to reset the transform so that Y is actually up. I'm going to hold down X on the keyboard and just snap the base of our cube to the base of the grid, okay? Because this is where we want everything to sit. If you imagine this is like the floor of our world, it's where the wheels are going to be touching. Okay, so with these dimensions in mind, we know that the truck is 3.4 meters long, or in centimeters, 340 centimeters. Okay, so we'll scale it in X to 340. In fact, actually, we'll scale it in Z or Z to 340 to be in line with our front cameras, because this is going to be quite important. You can see here, if you press space on the keyboard, it's going to bring up these 4 different windows. If it doesn't, press this button over here on the left hand side, okay? And then you'll get your 4 views. You'll see under each one, you'll get a name like side X, front Z, Y, top, and then perspective, which is what we're doing most of the work. You want our front camera to be Z, okay? So the length actually will be scaled in Z, so from the front we won't see any change, but from the side X we will. So that's our length. For the width, we're going to be doing that in X, so that's 1.47 meters or 147 centimeters. Okay. And then also the height is 179, so that'll be 179 centimeters. Okay. Now if I come back to perspective mode, this is the overall dimensions of our truck. I like to go ahead and name this something like scale box, you know, whatever you like, just name it something appropriate. And I also like to keep the transforms unfrozen, because then I can just refer back to that for the scale of things. Although it is a good idea, I think, just to keep it in a separate place, like on the notepad file that I have here. Okay, so now that we have this is going to help us or guide us to get our reference aligned correctly. Because now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be bringing in our blueprints. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the blueprints for this are a bit tricky. Outside of that $25 one, I had a hard time finding some. So there's these here, which gives us front, back, left, right, but we're missing the top, and you might think we can get away without it, and we probably can, but it will leave some things open to guessing, such as the curvature around here, which a top angle will really help us with. So I also have this one, and they're quite crude, but this is just to get us the shape, you realize. It also gives us some of the panel line information, but this is more just to get us the shape, and then we can cut the panels out later based on our higher quality reference that we have of the real world thing. So what I like to do is just take these images, and using the default Windows image editor, or you can use Photoshop, whatever, GIMP, whatever software you're comfortable with, Paint if you're a maniac. I'm just going to go ahead and edit these and crop them to give us the angles that we need, okay? So we're going to cut out all the information that we don't want. This will be our top view. I'm going to come to Save Options and go Save as Copy. Okay, and then in the same folder, I have just a reference folder within a project. I'm going to call this Truck Top. Okay, so now we have that as a separate image. what I can then do is come into the other blueprints, and then we're going to do the exact same for the different angles here as well. We do have both left and right sides. I'm just going to go with the left side here, or left side assuming we're looking at the truck from the back, right if you're looking at it from the front. Any like different details, we can figure that out just based on the reference later. And we'll probably end up modeling this on one side anyway, and then just mirroring it across and adding in any asymmetry afterwards, just for the sake of our own sanity, and saving us a lot of time too in the process. So we're going to go ahead and get the front view here. Again, save as copy. I'll call this truck front. Close that down. And we'll do the exact same thing again for the side. If you want to go ahead and do the right side, that's totally fine too. Feel free to do that. Based on like our higher detail reference, we can always import the image in for later. But the front, top, and side are the most important ones. So now that we have these, I'm just going to copy this file path because we're going to need that in a moment. I'm going to press 4 on the keyboard to take us into wireframe mode, and I'm going to come up here to create, and then I'm going to go to free image plane. Now this will allow us to bring an image in as our reference directly into our Maya scene. I'm going to open up the attribute editor on the right hand side here, and we're going to come to image name. We're then going to paste that link we copied to the location of our reference, and I'm going to just pick the truck top for the time being. Okay, by default this will come in relatively small. It will kind of depend on the scale of your reference. So we can just scale that up using the regular scale tool on the keyboard. S or R to open that up, or you can get it from here on the left hand side. We're going to just rotate this. I'm going to hold down J on the keyboard, by the way, to angle snap that, if you're not familiar with that. And then we'll just rotate that into place. We'll come to our top view, and we just want to make sure that is going the way we need it to. So we're pointing down Z. This is also pointing down Z now as well. And that is the correct orientation for us. So from this top view here, I'm just going to turn off the grid so it doesn't get too distracting with this button up here. And I'm just going to scale this up until the dimensions match. Okay, we're not looking for the wing mirrors, just the overall shape of the body. Now, in theory, this should line up pretty accurately. There you go. So it's not entirely uncommon to have issues with blueprints acquired online because they're not necessarily created to the highest quality standards. They're normally just created by people. You're not getting these directly from the manufacturer. One thing I like to do within the attribute editor for our image plane is just turn down the alpha gain a little bit so we can actually see our bounding box, and we can make sure that is lined up as well as we can. So it looks like it's going over slightly, but that's probably just because we've got these really thick lines on the outside. And slightly there as well, so we'll scale it down slightly. And it's important at this stage you get this to line up as perfectly as possible, because it's just going to make your life easier later. Okay, pretty happy with that. So that's lining up with the length. We're then going to go ahead and repeat the same process. We're going to create free image plane, and then this can be our side view. So we will take the truck side, scale that up again, and then just rotate that to follow the same direction. I like to have this sitting, like the wheelbase kind of sitting on the grid. So we'll come to the side view. I'm just pressing space on the keyboard, by the way, to change the view that we have. We're going to turn off the grid again so it doesn't get in the way, and then we're also going to turn down the alpha gain a little again, just so we can see a little bit better what we're doing. And then, just like before, we're going to scale up until this fits perfectly within the bounds of our bounding box. Okay, there we go. And yeah, you can see here, this is what I'm talking about with blueprints not quite matching and like the scales not quite matching. we know that the height of this truck is 3.4 meters. Or not 3.4 meters, 1.79 meters, but this blueprint here is a little off, so this is where things can get a little tricky. So yeah, that is kind of always the risk with using free blueprints, but they'll get us most of the way there. I've adjusted it a little more. You can see this tire here is a bit like higher than the other one. I don't know whether that was the case in real life, but for the time being I'm just going to have the lowest tire be the one that's contacting the ground, and there's not too much difference in the headroom, so we'll roll with it. Looking at our two blueprints here within the perspective viewport, you can see things are lining up relatively nicely, so I'm not terribly concerned that this is going to be causing us too many problems. Okay, so we'll do this one more time. The last thing that we need to bring in is the front. So again, create free image plane. We're going to take the truck front this time. And again, scale it up. We shouldn't have to rotate it this time. We'll come to the front view. Reduce our alpha gain again, and then we'll just scale this down till this fits in. Yeah, you can see we're getting the same scale issues here from the front side, but again, it's not too far off. So yeah, we just want to get this to line up about as accurately as possible. Okay, if we come back to the perspective view and we just whack all of the alpha gains back up for our blueprints, you can see here now that we have everything in the scene, the lines should line up pretty accurately, right? If we bring this front here, you can see the lines of the top of the cabin are lining up with the side of the cabin, and the width is lining up with the bottom portion. Okay, so we're going to use these and these different angles to essentially create our model. So we'll start probably with a cube, and we'll block out the shape of the cabin, and we'll just be referencing the blueprints. We'll be going backwards and forwards between perspective, the top, the front, and the side to begin the block out. And once we're happy with the shape, we can go on and add all the details. And yeah, that is part one. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to let us know. This will likely be a much shorter project than the last one. If you guys followed along for the ship tutorial, you'll know that took a very, very long time. Just a very, very large project in general. So naturally it takes quite a while. But like I said in the beginning, we'll be going through the modeling now, detailing, lighting, texturing, and rendering. So yeah, this should be a good amount of fun. And I'll see you in the next part next week. And in the meantime, yeah, let us know if you have any questions. Thank you very much for watching. Like and subscribe. And until then, see you later.